them cities of light, yet few notice how dim the human spirit has become within them. The towers rise higher, the streets pulse with color and noise, but beneath the dazzle is a kind of stillness, a quiet vacancy of soul. The neon burns brighter than the stars, and still the eyes of those who walk among it seem half asleep. You can almost feel it in the air, the strange weight, the invisible mist that clings to the heart. Some would call it energy, some would call it despair, but those who see through the surface know it by its truer name, enchantment. A spell cast not by witches in forests, but by ideas whispered in boardrooms, classrooms, and bedrooms alike. This is the witchcraft of the modern world, not cauldrons and curses, but seduction by illusion, the promise that more is never enough, the belief that you can buy meaning, collect virtue, and earn grace with the right image or income. You can smell it in the marketplaces and hear it in the voices that sell success like salvation. It tells you that heaven is a brand and redemption is a product. It is no longer the devil that tempts us. It is the algorithm, the mortgage, the mirror. There are 5 cities, they say, where this spirit thrives. Most powerfully, New York, Los Angeles, Miami, San Francisco, and Las Vegas. But if you look closer, you realize those cities are only symbols. Each one stands for a desire within you. The skyline of ambition, the coast of pleasure, the desert of illusion, the valley of pride, the mountain of vanity. These are not maps of geography, but of the human soul. And in each there is a hunger that no amount of money can feed, a loneliness that no crowd can drown, and a darkness that no light display can outshine. The modern mind no longer bows to idols of stone. It bows to numbers on a screen, followers, dollars, status, validation, the new pantheon. Men kneel not at altars, but at desks, chanting emails instead of prayers, measuring their worth by what glows on a device. The ancient sorcerers promised transformation through ritual. Today's merchants promise it through self-branding and consumption. The spell is subtler now because it flatters the ego instead of frightening it. It doesn't tell you, serve me, it whispers. Be yourself, but better. And so you chase a reflection that is never still, a perfection that recedes as you move closer. That, my friend, is true witchcraft, the art of distraction from the soul. There was a time when faith meant surrender, when to believe was to lose one's life in order to find it. Now belief is a commodity of convenience. People claim faith the way they claim membership for social comfort, not for spiritual courage. They go to church on Sunday and return to the altars of greed on Monday. But do not mistake attendance for transformation. There is no spell stronger than the comfort of half-belief. It lets you think you are saved while you still serve the same master of vanity. And that is how the corruption spreads, not in sudden acts of evil, but in gentle compromise, in the slow decay of conscience. The devil no longer roars. He markets. If you could see the soul of a city, you would not see buildings or traffic. You would see light and shadow woven together like a vast tapestry. Some lights burn with compassion and integrity. Others flicker cold and hollow, feeding on the attention of others. And those who dwell in the latter believe themselves free, yet every day they wake and perform the same rituals of consumption. The store, the screen, the scroll, modern incantations designed to keep the heart from silence because silence would expose the truth. That man is starving not for more, but for meaning. That what he truly desires cannot be bought or built, but remembered. The wealth of the world has multiplied beyond imagination, yet so has the poverty of the spirit. We have more comfort, but less peace, more pleasure, but less joy, more connection, but less love. And so the witchcraft deepens, because it works best on those who think they are immune to it. They laugh at superstition while living under stronger spells than any medieval peasant ever knew. The spell of self-importance. the enchantment of constant noise, the worship of opinion. And when you try to break free, the world calls you naive, outdated, unrealistic, as though freedom were foolishness and slavery sophistication. But truth does not change with trends, and the soul does not evolve by hashtags. It remembers eternity. I once walked the streets of one of these so-called cursed cities, not to condemn it, but to understand it. It was not evil that I found, but emptiness. People rushing, selling, entertaining, but behind every movement was a search for something sacred. They longed for magic, and they found it only not in the form they hoped for. Instead of divine wonder, they found distraction. Instead of revelation, stimulation. And yet I could not hate them, for I saw myself among them. For is not every man a city? Within me too were streets of vanity, towers of pride, districts of desire, and if there was witchcraft in them, it was because there was weakness in me. Evil cannot dwell where there is no vacancy. So I began to look not at the city, but at the heart. I asked myself, what makes a man truly wealthy? Is it possession or perception? Is it the abundance of things or the awareness of grace? Wealth that ends at the hand ends with the grave, but wealth that begins in the spirit endures beyond time. To have much and be empty is poverty. To have little and be full of gratitude is power. The difference is not in what one owns, but in what one worships. And here lies the greatest danger. When men worship money, they do not become rich, they become possessed. The spell reverses, and what they sought to control begins to control them. That is the unseen witchcraft of modern civilization, the enslavement of the spirit by the tools it created. There is nothing wrong with gold. It is the human heart that corrupts it. Money is innocent until it becomes a substitute for meaning. Then it begins to whisper not through demons, but through desire. You could be more, it says. You could have what they have. You could matter. But mattering is not found in ownership. It is found in purpose. And purpose cannot be purchased, only lived. Those who chase it through status find themselves weary and hungry, for success without soul is famine in disguise. The wealth that matters most cannot be shown. It must be felt in peace, in kindness, in the quiet joy of doing good unseen. It is easy to see witchcraft in the rituals of others, harder to see it in our own habits. Yet what is addiction to praise but a modern spell? What is envy but an incantation that steals joy? What is gossip but the casting of curses with words? The dark arts have only changed their vocabulary. What was once hex and potion is now branding and influence. The same manipulation of unseen forces, the will to control perception, the hunger to be adored. And so long as we cannot look at these things with humility, we remain their victims. The first step toward deliverance is not exorcism, but honesty. And perhaps that is what faith truly means in our time, not the rejection of the world, but the refusal to be deceived by it, to see through the glamour of success and recognize the fragility beneath, to understand that every applause is temporary, but every act of integrity eternal, that no man can serve both gold and God, not because gold is evil, but because God is whole. You cannot divide your heart between meaning and material and expect peace. One must rule and one must serve. If you choose money, it will feed you with fear. If you choose truth, it will starve you of vanity. Either way, there will be suffering, but only one suffering leads to freedom. For all the noise of the world, the heart still whispers what it has always known, that abundance without virtue is decay, that power without love is ruin, that faith without works is a costume worn for approval. The real miracle is not wealth, but transformation, the alchemy of the spirit that turns pride into humility, fear into courage, and greed into gratitude. That is the true magic, the only kind worth seeking. And it begins the moment you stop chasing what glitters and start tending what glows. The spell begins with admiration. You see someone shining their car, their clothes, their confidence, and you feel that subtle ache inside, the whisper that says, "Why not you?" It's never loud enough to alarm you, only soft enough to guide you into the trance. You begin to imagine what life would be if you had more comfort, more praise, more control. The golden spell doesn't arrive with horns and smoke. It comes with hope. It tells you that your longing is justified, that your emptiness is proof you were meant for greatness. And it is right, but twisted. For the greatness it speaks of is not of the soul, but of the image. It teaches you to value reflection more than substance, to chase light not as revelation, but as advertisement. And so, the spell is cast. It works not because you are evil, but because you are human. You crave significance, and the world has built a system to sell it back to you at interest. It will give you importance if you can afford it. It will offer you identity if you can maintain it. It will crown you with relevance for as long as you can entertain it. But the moment you pause to breathe, it begins to fade. For the golden spell feeds on movement, on endless striving, endless proving, endless comparison. It is a treadmill made of gold, beautiful, hypnotic, but it never takes you anywhere. You see it in the eyes of those who have everything. They smile for the camera, but the soul behind the smile is often restless, uncertain, alone. They have climbed to the top of the tower only to discover it is hollow, echoing with their own voice. That is why so many who appear victorious begin to break in silence, not from poverty, but from absence. They thought they were chasing success, but success was chasing them, devouring piece after piece of their piece, until there was nothing left to feed on but exhaustion. This is the tragedy of the golden spell. It grants the world and takes the self. And yet, the market thrives, because there will always be another seeker. Someone else to believe that meaning can be earned through metrics. Someone else to trade their midnight prayers for daylight applause. And so long as the hunger remains unexamined, the spell will renew itself generation after generation. Fathers will teach sons to chase it. Mothers will pass to daughters the fear of being ordinary. We will all continue to decorate our prisons with luxury and call them dreams. But every spell has a weakness, a single word, a single truth that can unravel it. The golden spell fears gratitude. Gratitude destroys illusion because it makes you aware of what already is. It reminds you that joy is not purchased, it is perceived. The grateful soul is immune to enchantment because it no longer needs the promise of more. It has learned that meaning is not in what you gain, but in what you give. Gratitude turns consumption into communion. It takes what is common and reveals it as sacred. That morning breath, that simple meal, that one person who truly listens, these are not small things. They are the fragments of heaven, disguised as ordinary life. The modern world has trained you to overlook them, to believe that grandeur lies only in what others can see. But true wealth has never needed an audience. It is a quiet abundance, invisible, untweetable, unmeasurable. The golden spell cannot survive in silence, because silence forces you to feel. And when you truly feel not the simulated emotion of music or media, but the raw presence of existence, you begin to wake. You begin to remember that you were never meant to serve your possessions. They were meant to serve your purpose. Wealth, when rightly understood, is not evil. It is energy. It can feed or poison, depending on the vessel that holds it. A good man with money becomes a multiplier of mercy. A corrupted man with money becomes a magnifier of suffering. The moral question is never, do you have wealth? But, does your wealth have you? Because when gold sits on your shelf, you are master. But when it sits on your heart, you are slave. And slavery of the soul is the most dangerous enchantment of all, because it masquerades as freedom. You think you are choosing, when in truth you are being chosen, selected, directed, consumed by the very forces you thought you controlled. The ancients called this idolatry. Today we call it lifestyle. But the essence is the same. The worship of what is less than yourself. And nothing breaks a man faster than bowing to what should serve him. For everything material is temporary. It cannot return the worship you offer. You can pray to gold, but gold will never pray back. You can trust in status, but status will vanish the moment the crowd forgets your name. All false gods share one trait. They demand sacrifice and never offer resurrection. Look closely at the people who seem most powerful. Many are not leading, they are performing. They wear crowns forged by public opinion, yet every jewel is a shackle. They smile because they must, host because they must, succeed because they must not, because they are free, but because they are terrified of being forgotten. The golden spell turns kings into captives, entrepreneurs into entertainers, and believers into beggars for validation. And if you are not awake, you will call their chains jewelry. I tell you, wealth without wisdom is a curse written in glitter. The mind dazzled by luxury becomes blind to eternity. It cannot see value beyond visibility, beauty beyond branding, holiness beyond convenience. But wisdom restores sight. It teaches you to see through surfaces, to recognize that the mansion built on fear will crumble, while the hut built on love will outlast generations. For what endures is not what pleases the eye, but what nourishes the soul. Still, people resist this truth because it threatens their illusion of control. They would rather suffer in comfort than grow in humility. They would rather polish the mask than heal the wound beneath it. Because to awaken is to admit you were asleep. To be free is to confess you were enslaved. And pride cannot bear such honesty. So it defends its illusions with excuses. It mocks those who live simply. It pities those who find joy without cost. That is how darkness sustains itself, not by force, but by ridicule. But there is a deeper irony. The same cities that seem most infested with witchcraft are also the ones most capable of redemption. For wherever there is great darkness, there is great hunger for light. Beneath every tower of greed lies a soul searching for grace. Beneath every billboard of vanity beats a heart longing for meaning. The curse itself becomes the clue, the sickness points to the cure. The emptiness that drives the pursuit of wealth is not sin. It is longing misdirected. It is the soul's homesickness for the infinite, disguised as ambition for the finite. So do not despise those trapped by the golden spell. They are not wicked, only wounded. Their desire for status is a distorted prayer for recognition. Their greed is a corrupted thirst for significance. Their indulgence is the shadow of a forgotten joy. And the cure is not judgment, but awakening. To remind them and yourself that your worth was never something to earn, but something to remember. You were valuable before you proved anything. You were chosen before you achieved anything. The world only teaches you to forget. And so, the golden spell is broken not by effort, but by remembrance. When you remember who you are, not as a consumer, not as a competitor, but as a soul, the illusion begins to dissolve. The false gods lose their glamour. The advertisements lose their power. You begin to see wealth for what it truly is, a tool, not a temple. You use it with intention instead of obsession. You share it without fear of loss. You understand that giving is not depletion, but expansion. For what you release in love multiplies in meaning. And perhaps that is the true test of abundance, whether it enlarges your compassion or your ego. Real prosperity humbles you. False prosperity inflates you. One makes you a channel. The other makes you a container. And the moment you become a container, your blessings stagnate. Water that does not flow becomes poison. The same is true for wealth. It was never meant to stay with you. It was meant to move through you, to heal, to build, to bless. Every time you give without calculation, you tear another thread from the golden spell. Every time you choose honesty over advantage, you reclaim a piece of your sovereignty. Every time you refuse to compare your life to another, you walk one step closer to freedom. The golden spell is fragile, and it only survives where gratitude is absent. But the moment you speak thanksgiving not as ritual, but as revelation, the illusion begins to crumble, and light pours in. There is a market where everything can be bought, but nothing can satisfy. It stretches across continents and screens, but its true location is the human heart. You walk through it every day without noticing through the scroll, the store, the conversation that measures worth by acquisition. It smells of comfort and ambition, and yet the air is thin, for something vital has been traded away. This is the shadowed marketplace, the quiet cathedral of compromise, where morality is priced and virtue is negotiated. Here, success is the sermon, and profit the prayer. And every soul that enters leaves a little less alive than before. The merchants of this realm are not villains. They are visionaries, blinded by the glare of their own creation. They believe they are shaping civilization, yet often civilization is reshaping them. They began with noble dreams to innovate, to connect, to build, but somewhere along the way, purpose was replaced by performance. They do not sell because they love their craft, but because they fear being forgotten. The shadowed marketplace rewards noise more than truth, speed more than substance, attention more than integrity. And so, those who wish to be seen must learn to shout louder, even if it means drowning out the whisper of conscience. You can feel the tension in the soul of society. Every billboard, every feed, every flashing ad competes for the same sacred space, your attention. The attention that once belonged to silence, to prayer, to reflection, to love. Now it is sliced into fragments, sold to the highest bidder, scattered like pearls before algorithms. We do not know the price we pay for distraction, because we are too distracted to count the cost. Yet the cost is immense, the erosion of depth, the death of wonder, the slow suffocation of empathy. For where there is no stillness, there can be no soul. It would be easy to blame the system, but systems are only reflections of their makers. The corruption outside is a mirror of the compromise within. The city that worships greed is built by individuals who have forgotten gratitude. The society that rewards deceit is upheld by citizens who fear truth. And every time we say, that's just how the world works, we add another stone to the temple of indifference. Evil does not need believers. It only needs the bored and the busy. People too occupied to notice the small betrayals that turn humanity into machinery. Once wealth was a means of stewardship. Now it is a stage of performance. We flaunt generosity like spectacle, not sacrifice. We give only when we can announce it, help only when it enhances our image. The world applauds the act, not the heart behind it. And so giving becomes another transaction, a way to purchase approval. But true charity is invisible. It is not the hand that boasts, but the heart that bleeds. It requires no audience because it understands that real goodness is often misunderstood, even mocked. It gives because it must, not because it should. It gives because love has become the only currency that holds its value beyond death. In the shadowed marketplace, love is counterfeited more often than gold. Words of compassion are used as marketing, empathy turned into entertainment. We watch tragedies unfold through screens. We react with emojis, and we believe we have cared. But caring without action is sentiment disguised as virtue. It makes us feel moral without requiring us to be moral. That is the subtle poison of this age, the replacement of transformation with performance. the illusion that feeling something is the same as doing something. And thus the spell continues. Look closer, and you'll see that this marketplace is not driven by greed alone, but by fear, the fear of scarcity, the terror of irrelevance, the dread of insignificance. Men hoard because they fear they'll never have enough. Women chase validation because they fear they'll never be enough. We are haunted not by demons, but by doubts. And every purchase, every post, every boast is an exorcism of insecurity. Yet no sooner do we feed it than it grows hungrier, more demanding. The void cannot be filled by feeding. It only widens. Only love and truth can fill it, because only they reach beyond the boundary of the self. In the ancient world, witchcraft was feared because it claimed to control unseen forces. Today, the same illusion persists. We think we can command happiness through possession. We speak spells of affirmation over bank accounts and social feeds, trying to bend reality to our will. But power without virtue is always self-devouring. It promises control while deepening dependence. The more we chase mastery over the external, the more enslaved we become to the internal chaos we refuse to face. The marketplace does not merely sell goods. It sells distractions from self-examination. It keeps you busy enough to avoid asking who you've become. And yet within the noise there remains a faint music. A few souls still hear it, the rhythm of conscience, the quiet call of the eternal. They walk through the market differently. They buy without attachment, succeed without arrogance, give without witness. They live as though wealth were merely clay in the hands of purpose. You can recognize them not by their possessions, but by their peace. They move slowly in a world addicted to speed. They listen when others shout. They forgive when others retaliate. They are the quiet revolutionaries, dismantling witchcraft with awareness, casting light not with sermons, but with sincerity. For what breaks the shadow is not protest, but presence. When a single soul stands uncorrupted, the illusion begins to flicker. When one person chooses integrity over advantage, the spell weakens. It is not grand gestures, but hidden faithfulness that heals the world. The true saints are rarely seen because their work is too sacred for spectacle. They live ordinary lives with extraordinary truth. They pray without posting it. They love without leveraging it. They give without needing to be thanked. And, in doing so, they become the unseen architects of redemption, the counterforce to the darkness that pretends to rule. But the market will not release its captives easily. It whispers still, even to those who seek freedom. You could do more. You could have more. You could be more. And so begins the endless negotiation between soul and system. It is not enough to reject the marketplace. You must transform your relationship to it. You cannot live outside the world, but you can live beyond its control. To do so, you must rediscover value. Not the price of things, but their purpose. Not what they cost in money, but what they cost in meaning. You must learn to ask not, how much can I gain, but how much can I give without losing my soul? That question is the sword that cuts through illusion. The test of faith in this century is not persecution by tyrants, but seduction by comfort. The saints of old were thrown to lions. Today we are lulled by luxury. The enemy no longer threatens, he entertains. He makes evil fashionable and virtue embarrassing. He convinces you that cynicism is wisdom and humility is weakness. But when you choose humility, you disarm him. When you choose to serve rather than impress, you become untouchable. For what can the world take from a man who no longer worships it? What can the devil sell to a soul that already knows its worth? Every generation must decide what kind of marketplace it will build, one of exploitation or one of elevation. The shadow is not inevitable. It is invited. It grows in the corners we refuse to illuminate, and the light does not come from policy or protest, but from personhood, from the individual who chooses to live truthfully even when no one is watching. If enough people did that, the market would transform, because it could no longer profit from illusion. And perhaps that is the truest revolution, not to burn the system, but to starve it of deception. So the next time you feel small before the grandeur of cities, remember, every empire begins as a desire in the heart of one man. Change begins the same way. A single act of integrity, a single refusal to betray what is right, can ripple further than you can imagine. The shadowed marketplace is vast, but it trembles at the sight of one awakened soul, because that soul cannot be bought. And nothing terrifies the sellers of illusion more than a man or woman who sees through the show and still chooses love. The greatest wars are fought without armies. No banners, no battlefields, no trumpets, only silence. The clash happens in the unseen, in the place between thought and action, belief and doubt. The world may call it stress, indecision, or fatigue, but the soul knows it as warfare. It is the ancient conflict between light and shadow, between the voice that whispers, "Be still," and the other that screams, "Be more." Most people never realize this war exists, because it wages not in the sky, but behind their ribs. And those who do notice it often think they are losing, when in truth, the struggle itself is proof they are alive. The silent war does not announce itself with suffering. It begins with seduction. The voice of darkness never commands, it suggests. It tells you to rest your conscience for just a moment, to compromise just a little, to justify what you know is wrong because everyone does it. That is how kingdoms of virtue collapse, not by invasion, but by invitation. The devil does not steal thrones. He rents them from distracted tenants. Every time you ignore that small unease inside, a treaty is signed in your silence. And the cost is always your peace. You can tell when you are under attack by the way the heart begins to harden. Compassion feels inconvenient. Forgiveness feels foolish. Truth feels too heavy. You begin to live in fragments, smiling outwardly while crumbling inwardly. The soul becomes divided, and division is the enemy's only weapon. For once the self is split, it can be conquered by desire. Half of you prays, the other half calculates. Half believes, the other half bargains. You say you trust God, but you still keep a backup plan in case he fails. You say you are humble, yet you check the mirror for admiration. That is the exhaustion of modern man, to be half heaven, half hunger, constantly torn between faith and fear. But even in this chaos, grace moves quietly. It does not shout over the noise. It waits beneath it. It is patient, for it knows that every illusion eventually collapses under its own weight. The marketplace cannot satisfy forever. The golden spell cannot glitter indefinitely. Sooner or later, the lights go out, the applause fades, the image cracks, and in that silence, something sacred stirs. That is when grace enters, not to punish, but to remind you that what you lost was never real, and what is real was never lost. It is strange how suffering can become a form of clarity. When pain strips you of comfort, you finally see what cannot be taken. The man who has nothing left to prove is the freest man alive. The woman who no longer fears loss becomes unshakable. For the silent war reveals that peace is not the absence of battle, but mastery within it. The saint is not one who avoids temptation, but one who recognizes it and remains unmoved. To live righteously is not to float above conflict, but to walk through it with the steady rhythm of trust. Yet the enemy of the soul is cunning. He will not confront your faith directly. He will imitate it. He will give you half-truths, almost love, almost virtue. He will let you do good things for wrong reasons and applaud you for it. He will turn ministry into vanity, discipline into ego, compassion into performance. He will let you believe you are winning because you are admired, all while your heart grows colder beneath the applause. The devil is not afraid of good deeds. He is afraid of pure motives, because purity cannot be manipulated and sincerity cannot be sold. The silent war, then, is not fought with effort, but awareness. To see clearly is to resist. When you can look at temptation and call it by its true name, not pleasure but distraction, not success but slavery, it loses its spell. Darkness thrives on disguise. Unmask it, and it dissolves. That is why wisdom is stronger than strength, and humility more powerful than ambition. The proud man fights with fire and burns himself. The humble man waits, watches, and the flame dies from lack of fuel. But awareness demands solitude, and solitude terrifies the modern soul. We run from silence as though it were death, when in truth it is resurrection. For in silence we meet ourselves, the self we have buried beneath busyness, entertainment, and performance. There, in that quiet chamber of being, the voice of truth speaks without language. It tells you who you are beyond your name, your work, your wealth. It whispers not of becoming, but of being. It says, "You were enough before the world told you otherwise." To hear that voice is to awaken, and awakening is dangerous, for it makes you uncontrollable. The systems that profit from your fear cannot reach you once you know your worth. You will still live in the same world, but it will no longer own you. You may still use its money, but you will not worship it. You may still walk its streets, but you will no longer bow to its idols. You will become a quiet rebellion wrapped in calm, a soul that cannot be seduced by noise, because it has tasted the music of stillness. Every man who wins this silent war becomes light, not the kind that blinds, but the kind that guides, and such light terrifies darkness, because it cannot be corrupted. A single honest soul can unsettle entire empires of deceit. History has always turned on such people, those who refused to sell what was sacred. They did not shout slogans or chase approval. They simply lived truthfully. Their power came not from rebellion, but from integrity. Integrity, the invisible armor that no weapon of manipulation can pierce. And yet, do not imagine victory as permanent. The war never ends. It only deepens. Each triumph reveals subtler temptations, hidden pride disguised as humility, secret greed clothed as generosity. That is why the journey of faith is endless, not because God is cruel, but because truth is infinite. You do not reach it once, you return to it daily. The cross must be lifted again each morning, not as punishment, but as practice. For faith is not belief without doubt. It is loyalty despite it. It is the art of standing upright in a wind that never ceases. To fight this war well, you must learn the difference between peace and numbness. Numbness feels calm because it feels nothing. Peace feels calm because it trusts everything. One is withdrawal, the other surrender. The world encourages numbness, comfort that isolates you from pain and therefore from growth. But peace invites you to feel everything and still remain centered. That is divine strength, to stand amid chaos and not lose your clarity, to love in the presence of hate, to forgive in the shadow of betrayal. That is victory. And the battlefield is not out there, not in politics, not in culture, not in religion, but here, in the narrow corridor of the self. When you lie to protect your ego, you lose ground. When you choose honesty over comfort, you advance. When you envy, you weaken. When you bless, you strengthen. The war is constant, but so is grace. And grace is undefeated, though it often appears quiet. It does not need spectacle to prove itself. Its proof is endurance. If you listen closely, beneath the chaos of the world you can hear it, the soft pulse of eternity. It has never changed tempo. Empires rise and fall, currencies inflate and collapse, ideologies clash and fade, but that heartbeat remains. It is the rhythm of divine order, calling every restless soul back to its source. And one day, when the noise has exhausted itself, that rhythm will be all that remains. Those who have learned to live by it will not be afraid. They will simply recognize the music they have been dancing to all along.